Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Lexi and I'm a super amateur baker who loves to read. So the goal is that every week I post a video of me talking about a book while I attempt to bake something I have never made before. Today we are going to make peanut butter cookies, and if you can't tell by my shirt, we're going to talk about Jaws. Jaws is one of my favorite stories. I'm a huge shark lover. Thanks, Dad. And it is my all-time favorite movie, but just in case you weren't sure, it stems from this wonderful book written by Peter Benchley. So I know that most people probably have seen the movie at some point, but just in case you haven't seen the movie or read the book, we'll start with a short synopsis so that everybody knows, and we'll get started on our cookies. So Jaws, in a shorter version, is the story of a giant shark sort of wreaking havoc on an island town called Amity. I mean, like, eating people. That kind of wrecking. So, of course, the local sheriff and a fisherman from the town team up with a marine biologist to head out to sea and see if they can stop the shark from eating people. The longer version, or the little bit longer version of the synopsis, is that the town is, of course, being terrorized by this huge shark, which, when they call in Matt Hooper, the expert, they discover that it is, in fact, a great white shark. And that Matt Hooper, remember, he's the scientist, determines that the shark is not really going to go away. It's sort of doing a procedure that basically means it is going to eat all of the food that it possibly can, or that the area is providing for it, before it moves on to a different part of the oceans. But of course, the only food that is enough for this giant shark are the people of the area. So of course, the local fishermen, Quint, and Chief Brody, Chief of Police, are anxious to get this worked out and to get this shark out of their homeland. So they team up with Matt Hooper to go out on Quint's boat to find and see if they can maybe tag the shark and track its behavior, or, well, Quint would rather just kill it. So it's, I guess in a super simple, 3 men on a boat fishing for a couple of days. But of course it's filled with action and all of that good stuff. Now, on a short pause to talk about our cookies, it requires Crisco, which I have never used before. So, wish me luck. I'm gonna put it back in this cute little box when I'm done. It kind of just looks like butter. So, I guess that's essentially, like, I feel like I should melt this. Like, I feel like this is going to be really hard to stir. Ooh, I forgot to preheat the oven. Okay, oven preheated, Crisco added, moving on. One of the reasons that I like Jaws is just because my dad kind of raised me on a, I guess, monster movie thing. Anytime there was an animal or an alien or anything that was bigger than it was supposed to be, my dad loved it and we watched it all the time growing up. So I saw Jaws, of course, when I was probably too young to see Jaws, but what are you gonna do? And I was a little bit scared to take a bath, but other than that, I think we survived it okay. I realized there was a book, I think sometime in high school, and really I think, it's not a very thick book, but truly I think they did a really good job of adapting it into a film. They didn't really change that much, they didn't really leave that much out, and I think the things that they did change and leave out were honestly kind of unnecessary to the story to begin with, in my opinion, so I think that it really just made the movie that much better. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about the movie a little bit later because it did some crazy stuff for cinema. And so I do think it's important to talk about. But for now, If you're interested in reading the book, I highly recommend it. It's really fun. It's a great book. I do not recommend going on a vengeance against sharks. I'm a huge shark lover, and especially great whites are my absolute favorite, probably because I grew up watching Jaws. If the spirit moves you to donate to an ocean life facility or a shark research facility, please do. There's some really incredible places out there that try their best for ocean conservation, and whether people like it or not, sharks are a huge deal to us on Earth. Without them, I mean, ecosystems would just crash. So as scary as they might be, they're also truly incredible creatures, and I highly recommend that you donate if you can. But if you're more just like, okay, get on with it, I highly recommend reading this book. I have this really fun mixture going. I think it's okay. I've never made these, so I have no idea what it's supposed to look like. If you're interested in reading this book and you don't want things spoiled for you, I would go ahead and skip ahead to later in the video, because from here on out, I'm going to talk with some spoilers. So let's talk about Jaws a little bit more in depth. One of the things that I find really interesting about this book is the dynamics between the three characters, because they're all so different. Chief Brody is honestly scared of water. He says that pretty early on, which is sort of funny and interesting. I lost count how many of these I was doing. And then you've got Hooper, who is, you know, the smarty pants of the group, right? And he is trying to base everything on science. He wants to save this shark. But then you've got Quint, who's the total opposite of Hooper, and Quint wants nothing more than to just kill this shark and get rid of it. Oh no. I got some interesting news. I think I'm out of vanilla, and I do not have as much as I'm supposed to have. Okay, well, these cookies are going ahead with a lack of vanilla, because we can't do anything about it at this point. So we have about half a tablespoon less of vanilla than we're supposed to have. But, you know, I feel like of all the ingredients to not have, there are worse ones. That's what I'm thinking anyway. We'll find out when they're cooked. Back to Jaws. So what I like is that the three characters are just so different, and you just know there's going to be problems. I mean, you know there's no way that is just going to work out perfectly. The other thing that I find interesting about this story is that it really, I feel like, is different than a lot of the monster stories you come across when you're reading or watching TV, because truthfully, this is a very unique sort of monster. It's a little more realistic than what we usually come up against, but what makes it a fictionalized monster is, fun fact, not its size. A lot of sharks can grow up to be 25 feet, usually female great whites. Surprise. But it's the fact that the shark clearly has a vengeance against these characters and is willing to hunt them down relentlessly. So that's what makes it kind of a big fiction, is this shark is not a normal shark. This shark is hell-bent on revenge. And it's like it knows these people are out to get it, and so it's gonna go ahead and get them first. So I don't have a fourth cup. I think it broke along with my, like, 1 cup. So a little bit of this is just kind of guesswork, and that's why I'm not a very good baker. One of the other things that I really like about this story is that you really don't get a lot of different perspectives. I feel like nowadays when I read stories, it's pretty common for authors to tell the story from the viewpoint of different characters. And sometimes, depending on the story, depending on the author, you have a lot of different characters that you go through. And in the book, we really only have Chief Brody, Matt Hooper, Quint, and then every once in a while you get, Chief Brody's wife's point of view. But no, that's pretty much it, and you don't have to go back and forth and like wonder who all of these different characters are. which is usually my biggest pet peeve with books that bounce back and forth between all these characters, is just trying to remember who they all are and where we last left off. The other thing that I enjoy is just that, you know, the shark does not leave these men alone. I mean, he is ruthless, and every time that they think the situation is under control and that they're the ones in charge, the shark just comes right back around and kind of reminds them that they're in a pretty difficult situation and in a wooden boat out in the middle of the ocean. Really, it's kind of the basis of the book. I mean, truly and honestly. You know, and then of course you have Quint, who dies. Although, to be honest, I think it's a little bit hard to feel sorry for him because he was, like, definitely out to get this shark. I mean, for sure, though, was out to get this shark. You know, at least Chief Brody, Chief Brody does want it dead because he's just scared of the ocean and just trying to do his job. But I feel like Chief Brody's a little bit easier to relate to. And Hooper is in the books I find him to be, or in the book, there's only one. In the book I find him to be extremely pompous in certain sections, but he's trying to do the right thing. I mean, he wants to tag the shark and study its behavior. Quint is literally just out to kill the shark. Alright, it is time to put these on the baking pan. Now, I am supposed to flatten them a little bit with a fork so you get that really fun pattern. I don't know who invented that, but I guess that's the thing to do, so we'll give it a try. I like to use my ice cream scoop, and I also use another little spoon to kind of help get stuff out here. So let's go ahead and put some on the tray. Okay, one thing I'm noticing about these cookies versus the chocolate chip cookies that I did last week is they're a lot, like, more, I guess, packed together is the term that I'm looking for. Like, the dough is not nearly as, I guess, runny as the chocolate chip cookies. And it's kind of a lot easier to scoop them up and put them where I need them. Should I try this? Like, should I make sure that this is actually good? It tastes good. I'm supposed to do it in a crossing pattern. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm doing some of these maybe too deep. But then that first one I felt like I didn't do deep enough. We did the best we could. All right, here is our first round of cookies. I tried the crisscross pattern. Not sure how it's gonna work, but we'll put them in and see what happens. But we lose Quint. We're not super sad about it. But we do also lose Hooper, which we are a little sad about. But then at the same time, in the book, he has an affair with Chief Brody's wife. So you're kind of like, I feel worse for you because you wanted to do something nice for the shark. But I also don't feel super bad for you because you helped this woman cheat on her husband. So I sort of feel like neither death hits you too hard for whatever reason. I mean, I think just the characters are not made to be mourned, quite honestly. I think that's just the truth of it. Okay, we're gonna get a second batch ready to go. Always 2 baking sheets so that we don't have to wait super long for all of the cookies to be done. Although I will say, I think because these cookies are a little more stuck together, a little more compact, I feel like it's not going to make quite as many. Like my chocolate chips, I feel like made quite a bit. I feel like these ones aren't going to make quite as many. But that may not be a bad thing necessarily. I mean, we don't need 800 cookies lying around, I guess. Alright, if you have been waiting for it, now is the time to rejoin for spoiler-free moments. We are back. We're going to talk about the movie a little bit. Like I said, the movie did a lot for cinema that people don't realize, and so I do think it's worth mentioning. The thing about the movie is that the story wasn't really big until the movie came out, as happens with a lot of books, unfortunately. Jaws is considered the first summer blockbuster. So at that time, in the 70s, it wasn't popular to release movies in the summer. You know, probably because people spent more time outside. I don't know. It was more popular to release them at different times of the year. But when Jaws was released on June 20th of 1975, it was the first big summer blockbuster. I mean, people went to see it in huge numbers. So it was a really big deal, and the movie made an insane amount of money. I didn't look that up, I should have, but I just know that it just made a lot of money. And it became the first summer blockbuster. So now, movies often get released at the beginning of the summer, because they believe that to be a huge time for moviegoers, which I suppose it is. I mean, it never died, so we proved it right. The movie was crazy difficult to make. If you've never watched a documentary about it, I would suggest it. It's really interesting. I'm a nerd, so maybe I just find that interesting, but I do. The mechanical shark that they built sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. So if you've seen the movie, you see that they use the yellow barrels to try to bring the shark down. They decided to do that and write that into the script because it indicated that the shark was close without having to rely on the mechanical shark, named Bruce, to work properly. So it was a really difficult film to be made. A lot of the interviews from the cast and crew say, you know, it was a great experience and they loved it, but there were a lot of difficulties along the way. Arguments between castmates, arguments between the crew. But it really was a big deal for Steven Spielberg as well. I mean, now he's a household name, but back then he was really just kind of getting started. It was unfortunately a really big deal for sharks too. In fact, the author Peter Benchley has a small spot in the movie. He's the reporter towards the beginning-ish of the film, but he and his wife ended up devoting the rest of their life to shark conservation because he didn't realize when he wrote the book how important sharks were and how damaging this book and this film were going to be for sharks. It really spiked a fear of water and the unknown, which is fair. I mean, a lot of people have that. I myself am not a huge fan of going out deep into the ocean. I think the ocean is a beautiful place. I don't know that I necessarily want to be out and about. I'm not entirely sure when to take these cookies out because I've never made them before. So I feel like we're close though with our first batch. They're definitely going to be a lot bigger cookies than anticipated. They spread out a lot unexpectedly in the oven. That ought to be interesting. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pull these out of the oven because, like I said, I'm not entirely sure how long they're supposed to be cooked or what they're supposed to look like when they're ready, and I don't want to accidentally burn them. The bottoms, like around the edges and stuff, look like they're probably cooked, so that should be a good sign, right? I'm going to give them a second and then I'm going to transfer them over to my paper towels. Overall, I think that this is a really good book. I think that it's honestly a classic, but I don't think it's really considered that way because the movie overshadowed it, but that happens sometimes. If you're interested at all in the origins of this, you know, incredibly popular old movie, I would highly recommend reading the book. But also, let me know your thoughts if you have read the book or once you read it. Let me know what you think. Was there anything that I didn't discuss? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. If you're thinking that you might enjoy seeing the movie, but you're not really into the book, that's okay. I highly recommend seeing the movie. You just have to remember that it was made in the 70s, so there's some stuff that's obviously like, that was the 70s. But it's a classic. I mean, you're gonna need a bigger boat. Come on, everybody loves that. So I highly recommend checking it out in some way, shape, or form. Alright, well, here is one of our first finished products. You can see that I tried really hard to make the cute little fork things. It was a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, the cookie. But it's okay. I mean, it's got a decent color, so we'll see. I like it. I think it's good. It's probably a little less sweet than it was supposed to be since I ran out of vanilla. Oops. But I think, like I said earlier, if you're going to run out of a product, I think maybe vanilla is the best one to run out of. And I had some. I mean, I had a little bit of what I needed. Yeah, this is a good cookie. I'm proud of this. Success! We did it. So let me know what you think down below. Let me know what you think of Jaws. Let me know what you think of my horrible baking skills. If you have any recipes you want me to try, go ahead and post them in the comments. Remember, please remember that I am an amateur baker, so we're starting with cookies because I feel like they're the easiest. And we kind of want to work our way up. So if you have a cookie or cupcake or muffin recipe that you think I should try, that's where we're at right now, I think. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you had a good time, please hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and check out Jaws. Look at your local library or local bookshops first and see if you can check it out. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!